palagi ay kinakabahan pag may ganitong okasyon kasi hindi ako sanay na magsalita tungkol sa gawa ng aking huligang bale, no? Pero subukan natin ito. So, sayang lang at wala si Professor Campos dito, no? But ito ay isang kritik na aking sinulat tungkol sa kanyang librong abale. At dahil sa limited ang ating time, isa lang siguro ang aking tatalakay at ito yung kanyang introduction. Let me start. No? In discussing Professor Patrick Campos' book, The End of National Cinema, I'm here not to address the entirety of his book, but rather I selected a part of it, and that is his introduction. No? So it's Professor Campos' pronouncement of an end of national cinema is, for a film historian like myself, something that is jolting. It makes me to take notice at what is being claimed by such a bold pronouncement. Naturally, my reaction is, what is the historical basis? Or what is the historical truth behind that claim? Is there one to find, or is it one of those claims that the sky is falling? It is clear that the topic I want to discuss in the book is the introduction, where the claim of national cinema ending is made. Due to the brief time that has been allotted, I can only devote, as I said, one topic, and if there's little time for mamaya, I have another topic, which is Cinemalaya and the politics of naming a movement. It's not that I am not interested with the rest of what the author has written, but rather it is out of respect for him that I refrain from engaging in discussing topics that will only be dealt with slightly and lightly, given the limited time that we have. So to the subject of the end of national cinema, my foremost concern is the historicity of the claim. This puts me possibly at odds with the author because I sense that he makes the claim of an end to national cinema as a theoretical project and not a historical one. Throughout the essay, while grounding his arguments in recent phenomena such as globalization and what globalization has done on the region's national cinemas, his response is one of theoretical speculation. I find this to be in the nature of Professor Campos, one who I admire for his erudite command of film theory and his scholarly practice of film criticism. But my discomfort over his essay lies in what I perceive to be his lack of appreciation of the actual, material transformations that turn real events into states of historical reality. Instead, he favors the path. I have barely started. Instead, he favors the path of theoretical interlocution rather than a hard historical investigation. I am not saying Professor Campos tried to avoid matters of historical importance, because he has. It is just that the lens he uses makes him see events that we too also see as we live in the same world that he inhabits. But he sees it from the vantage point of theory rather than history. This, therefore, is how I regard his audacious pronouncement. He has all the right to make this claim so long as we can frame him in the context of where he comes from. Of course, the same applies to me as a historian. I therefore argue that Professor Campos' claim about the end of national cinema is only one response to the changes that are happening and are bound to happen to Philippine cinema. The author's claim is premised on the notion of how national cinema is transformed in the context of globalization. His response is to see that the institution of national cinema is doomed in the face of globalizing forces that are out to transform it. While he presents empirical data to support his argument, it is clear to me that he has been selective in his choice of examples, and such choices, in my mind, all suffice to build his case, that the national cinema is indeed ending. The problem with this argument is this: is the end of national cinema the only destiny left for national cinema when faced by globalization? As we take notice of Professor Campos' doomsday scenario, we may as well ask, what other possible scenarios are there that Professor Campos ignored or perhaps even suppressed in his appraisal of the situation? His project, as I have earlier mentioned, is one of theoretical engagement, clearly obvious in the problematic he raises in his essay. It goes this way: what are the shifting ontological and epistemological grounds of national cinema in the context of globalization? This patently is a theoretical, sets him on a theoretical quest to know what happens to national cinema in the age that he so defines. His argument to support his project is this: global trends have understandably and here you are, okay. Global trends have understandably and irreversibly altered the aesthetics, technologies, and modes of production and circulation of films. In such a context, we may ask, is the concept of national cinema still tenable? For a materialist historian such as myself, I am surprised at the conflation that Professor Campos makes between the national and the global. This is as if the nation is helplessly doomed to drag. What is this? This is as if the nation is helplessly doomed to be dragged into the path of the global without the resistance, such as those that... Oh dear, that's cruel. Alright. Such as those waged in blood and warfare that happened in the past. So anyway, let me just jump within this 2 minutes that are being given to me that if he only looked at the other possible scenarios, one could see that there can be perhaps 3 or more. One would be the rise of nationalist tendencies through private capitalists, which bury the national cinema in smaller and smaller circles of national definitions. 2, there can be the state can assume, or rather can be motivated to nationalize the cinema. And 3rd, which is really happening right now as a reality in Philippine cinema, there is this internal regionalization, which I think is a strong resistance towards the globalizing of cinema. Alright, one critique that I have is that I think Professor Campos has looked at the exceptional examples of the best practices in regional co-production and looks at them as symptomatic of a New World film order. But the sad thing about it, however, and I think we can discuss this in detail later on, is that this seems very synthetic and it's hard to find, for example, filmmakers in Asia that would claim that they are ASEAN filmmakers. A recently concluded event, such as the ASEANale, I was desperate to look for anybody who would like to claim himself as, so you are an ASEAN filmmaker. Still, everybody is known, even in international festivals that I've attended, Berlin, Tokyo, etc., film festivals, and always the name of the country is always the one that is being invoked. So may I just read my final, perhaps, paragraph, although there's a lot that needs to be discussed here. Okay. Finally, I note that there is one belief that Professor Campos and I can share when he says, cinema has in fact never been insular or merely national. I was very happy to find this commonality, but no sooner had I found a common ground for us, I immediately see how different we are too. When I trace the global colonial origins of motion pictures in the books that I write, demystifying its claims of authentic nativeness, I do not declare the process as one leading to the end of national cinema, but rather I use it to affirm the notion that the national cinema is not authentically pure, as it is a product of its historical relations with the past in terms of colonialism, capitalism, populism, globalism, elitism, among others. Hence, despite the global forces composing national cinema, it is my belief that globalization aids to construct the national cinema and not the other way around. Professor Campos wants us to see it the other way, however. He thinks that with the infusion of capital, technology, and market, globalization leads to the diminution and eventually the death of national cinema. Or perhaps, maybe we can discuss this later on, transformation into something else, maybe a regional cinema. His ideas are premised on the forces that have been for a century been shaping cinemas that develop on native soil. But as history shows, such external forces have only strengthened rather than diminished the national cinema. How little still do we know of the power that shapes nations and the national cinemas that they have. I rest my case.
Thank you, Professor Deocampo. Now we'll have Professor Oliva.